Hello, my fellow Ethereans, and welcome to episode 10 of the She-Ra Princess of Power Comprehensive Review Series. And this time, we're going to be doing Mermista, the Mist-i-fying Mermaid of the Princess of Power toy line. Who doesn't love mermaids? I love mermaids. I hope you like mermaids. One of my favorite movies was Splash, done sometime in the 80s with was it Daryl Hannah and Tom Hanks? And who doesn't love mermaids? Anyway, Mermista here came out in 1986. That's the second wave of the Princess of Power toy line. And she started out in development as a character named Marina. The 1986 wave, I've talked about it a little bit before with Frosta, seemed to have a focus on elementals. A big portion of the development of the 1986 wave focused on an expansion of Frosta's world. So we were going to see a focus on the Kingdom of Snows. We were going to get a Castle Chill playset. Crystalla, Frosta's sister, was going to make her debut. And there was going to be all sorts of snow-themed characters and vehicles and whatnot. In opposition to Frosta was the evil Vulcana, who hailed from the region of Vulcania. It was a volcano region, or a volcanic region, that was somewhere in between the Talon Mountains and the Fright Zone. The Talon Mountains, for those who don't know, is the lair of Hunga the Harpy from the Filmation show. Talon Mountain actually has a place in the vintage toy line continuity. You can see it on the Etheria map that comes with the Crystal Castle. Anyway, Vulcana was going to be the evil fire goddess. She was going to be the opposite of Frosta. And of course, she represented lava and fire. Frosta represented snow and ice. And along with these two characters, we would have seen a slew of elemental type characters. So the water character would have been Marina, who was going to be a mermaid. We also got Terra, who was focused on the earth. Jasmine, who was focused on plants. Ariel, who was focused on the air. And I'm blanking on some of the other ones, but the 1986 line had a strong focus on the concept of the elementals. That line, unfortunately, didn't come into being, and a lot of those concepts were scrapped, and the grandiose focus of the elemental concept was tapered down. The fire characters were totally scrapped out, most likely because of that focus on fire, and that just seemed to be an area of trouble for kids. Plus, too many villains, so those characters all got scrapped. Vulcania, the playset that was going to come with those fire villains, was recycled into Mermista's playset, and I'll get to that later in the video. The packaging for Mermista labeled her the Mist-i-fying Mermaid, and that's because her action feature was spraying water through her necklace. The shell that she came with, you could soak up water into the shell and inject the shell in her back and spray water through her necklace. Mermista is closely associated with the Crystal Falls, as I've mentioned before. Sea Harp, who was one of the animal/vehicles released in Wave 2, is also considered to be closely associated with Mermista. The Sea Harp is shown in art with Mermista. Mermista's featured on the Sea Harp packaging. And so it just seems that Mermista is one of the very few characters in the Princess of Power toy line to get some strong focus beyond just getting a figure released. She gets her own playset, unofficially, and she also gets her own vehicle or steed. Mermista is introduced in the mini comic A Fishy Business, along with the Crystal Falls, Scratch and Sound Catra, and Peekaboo. She is shown to communicate with sea life and controls water, common themes for the character in most of her depictions. You can see Mermista in the Ladybird book The Lost River, and she also shows up in the UK comics titled The Siren Fish of Etheria and The Moon Jewel. She also can be seen in the She-Ra magazines. On the show, Mermista is voiced by Melanie Britt, who also does Adora, She-Ra, and Catra. Mermista is depicted with a French dialect. She appeared in 4 episodes and played a role in the events of the Christmas special. She can control water and telepathically communicate with sea life. She can convert from human to mermaid, as she does in most of her depictions, and she gains these abilities from the Power Pearl, which resides in Selenius. She is the Princess of Selenius, which is off of the coast of Bright Moon. She is the daughter of King Mercier, who wishes to stay neutral in the war against the evil horde. This is vintage Mermista, released in 1986. She is one of the figures to have the special pivot joint in the head. So you can see that she can cock her head to the side, which is a different feature that the first wave of Princess of Power figures did not have. Mermista has the standard articulation. Besides that, she can pivot her head from left to right, and of course she can do the head tilt, and then she can also do articulation in the arms there. She has a tight waist that mine actually doesn't move, so I'm not gonna force that. And then she has articulation in the legs. She features this hole on her back, which is where her shell plugs in. Let's do this here. And with water, you can squirt water through the hole in her necklace. Mermista also comes with a tail. For this vintage figure, instead of a dress or skirt that snaps on the back, this figure, since she's a mermaid, has the power of converting from mermaid to human. And so her tail is her dress. So put the skirt on, snap it on, she's a mermaid. Remove the skirt, she's a human with legs. And so that is what I would consider a secondary action feature for Mermista, along with the mist that sprays out of her necklace. As accessories, Mermista came with her comb, her shield, and her spray shell. She was often marketed with the Crystal Falls, and I believe also with the Sea Harp, making her one of the unique figures that was associated closely with a playset and a vehicle slash beast. Masters of the Universe Classics Mermista was released in 2014. She had the distinction of beheading Mer-Man in her bio, she being the Princess of Power equivalent of Mer-Man in her respective toy line. This Mermista has articulation in the head, but it's limited by the sculpt of her hair. She has articulation in the shoulders, um, the bicep, the elbow, and of course the wrist. She was released with her conch shell, but she does not have the action feature of spraying water this time around. She also has articulation in the hips and the knees, and of course the ankle. She has articulation at the waist as well, and you can remove the legs and put on the fishtail. The fishtail is articulated at the waist as well. You can put her in sitting poses, and she's got a knee joint. The tail also has articulation, and it comes with this nice little fancy plastic stand that you're able to pose Mermista on. The tail is very glittery, so a lot of handling will cause the glitter to rub off, so I'd be careful there. But I think the Four Horsemen did a great job of representing Mermista in action figure form. It's really the only way you can do it as far as popping off the legs and popping on the tail. I think that the tail is very beautiful. Interestingly enough, the legs that she uses in her human form in the Classics line are actually based on the legs from her vintage action figure. In the cartoon series, her legs are more of a human version of her tail. So her legs actually have the same uh, scaly texture, even with fins coming off of her ankles versus being flesh with boots. So that was an interesting choice from the Four Horsemen, but I suspect it has a lot to do with them trying to pay as much homage to the vintage toy line in the cartoon series, trying to marry them both as seamlessly and evenly as possible. So it would be nice if they did a second pair of legs for Mermista that were more Filmation oriented, but I'm happy with the figure as is. I am a vintage Princess of Power toy fan, so it's okay for me, but I'm sure that a lot of Filmation collectors would prefer the Filmation legs. So that's that. Okay, next time we will be doing episode 11, which will focus on Natasha. She is from wave 3, the final wave of Princess of Power, and happens to be one of the more elusive and expensive figures from the vintage Princess of Power line. She did get featured in the cartoon series more so than her counterpart Spinnerella, and is one of the, I would say, corner pieces of the Princess of Power collection due to her elusive nature. So come back next time for episode 11, focusing on Natasha. And until then, ta-ta for now.